Hey, string players. Today we are going to be starting an introduction to shifting. I know many of you have been waiting for this for many years, so I'm excited to start learning this, and this is something we'll be working on in our lessons through this entire year. So before we look in our lesson books, I actually just want to really quickly explain what shifting is. Um, some of you have started doing this in lessons last year. For others, it's brand new. So we're going to start right from the beginning. And I have my violin here. And normally on a violin or a viola, to play the note G on the D string, I would put down 3 fingers and it would sound like this. On cello, that's going to be 4 fingers, and bass, that's actually an open string for you, but you can all think about how to play that note G. And again, 3 fingers for violin and viola sounds like this. Now that note is going to be G no matter what finger I play it with, and that's the basis of shifting, that I can actually take my first finger, my index finger, and move my whole hand up and put my first finger where the third finger used to be. And it sounds the same. So if you're a violin or a viola, when we talk about third position, it means instead your first finger is going to go where your third finger once was. And when you shift, it's very important that your thumb moves up with your hand. Okay, so if you're a violin or viola right now, what I would like you to practice doing, and this isn't in the book, we haven't gotten there yet, but I'd like you to practice playing 3 finger G, and then shifting up, moving your whole hand with you and putting your first finger down. See, I went a little too far there, and that's okay. It's a new thing, so you might have to do a little bit of trial and error the first few times. Eventually, you'll just be able to land right there. And so that's the way that you should practice if you're a violin or viola. Really get that down, going from 3 to 1. If you're a cello or a bass, it's the same idea with your thumb, right? So cellos, it's 4 fingers. Bass, it was an open G. Now you're going to play it with your first finger. But you have your hand like this for first position, and then to shift up to third, you're going to make sure that your thumb follows you. So our thumb doesn't stay back here. It follows, and our hand frame stays the same no matter where we are. So again, cellos and bass, you can practice finding that note. It should sound identical, okay? And once you have that down, then we're going to move on to talking about our lesson book. So if you are comfortable with that idea of shifting, playing in a different position, we're going to open up our books to page 2. And we actually have to kind of talk about what some of these symbols mean and some of these diagrams before we can do any playing. So, and you're going to have to bear with me because, as you know, it's a little bit different for every instrument. So I'm going to take some time to go through and explain for each instrument. So we're looking on page 2 in the top box that says positions on the D string. Depending on what instrument you play, you may have more than one position listed in your book. The first thing we need to talk about are 2 very important words in music, and you may have heard me talk about them before, but I really want you to understand them now. The first one is called a half step, and the second one is called a whole step. Okay, so in music, a half step is when you go from one note to the very next note. There isn't a note in between, one right to the next note. A whole step is if you took 2 half steps and put them together. So a whole step is bigger. You can think about if you have half of a pie and you have another half of a pie and you put it together, then you have a whole pie. So 2 half steps equals 1 whole step. And when we look at these diagrams, and you can find your instrument over here, but it doesn't really matter which one you look at. Anytime there's a space between the diagram, that's a whole step. And anytime the notes are close, that's a half step. Now, depending on what instrument you play, how you create whole and half steps could be a little bit different. So violins, you've actually been doing this maybe without even realizing it on a pretty regular basis. We normally might have our fingers like this. Think if you're on the D string, you play D, 1 finger is E. This is for violas too, violins and violas. E, 2 fingers is F sharp, and 3 fingers is G. This is a whole step between 1 and 2, and then 2 to 3 is a half step. And then we learned about F natural, right? And now the half step is here between E and F natural, and F natural to G is a whole step. So you've already kind of been working through this last year as we worked on those low twos. Cellos, for you, it's actually even easier when you have your 1, 2, 3, 4 finger pattern. It's a half step between each of these. And you can think on your D string, normally you play E with your first finger, F sharp is with your third finger. So this is 2 half steps. That makes a whole step. 3 to 4, F sharp to G, is a half step. And the same deal if when we were doing F naturals, here's your half step, and then F natural to G is your whole step. Now cellos, and we will get to this today, it is possible for you to create a whole step from like your first finger to your second finger, and that's called an extension, and we'll get to that in a minute. But generally, when your hand is in a standard hand frame, each finger is going to be 1 half step apart. Okay, and based on a similar note, yours is actually even easier. Your finger pattern is always 1, 2, 4, and 1 to 2 is a half step, and 2 to 4 is a half step, and that's why basses have to shift a lot more often. You can't make a whole step from like 1 to 2. You can't stretch that far on the bass, at least at this point. So that's kind of an idea of how to make whole and half steps. I hope that made sense. I know I had to go through every instrument, so make sure if you didn't catch it for yours, go back and listen again. But now we're going to talk about how that relates to our positions. So I'd like you to look in that yellow box on the top, and you'll notice that each position is showing you how to play a different pattern of notes, and that's going to be very important. So let me take a minute to explain these patterns, and actually I'm going to do violin and viola last because yours is actually a little bit more confusing. So bear with me while I go through again everybody's finger patterns. Let's see, we'll start with cello over here. So cello's third position for you, as you can see, like I said, when you're in your standard hand frame, everything's a half step apart. All of these notes are close. So you have G, A flat, A, and B flat with 1, 2, 3, 4. And you would have to decide which of those notes you needed. Okay, so the first exercise actually that we play, you'll be using third position. You'll need G, A, and B flat, so you won't need to use that second finger for the first exercise, and we'll get to that in a minute. If you wanted to do something called third extended position, your first finger still goes on that G. Your first finger still goes on that G. Remember, we've shifted up. Where our fourth finger used to be, our first finger is there. Okay, here's your G. You're going to actually stretch with your second finger. That's called an extension. You're going to stretch up a whole step to get that note A. And then B flat and B, those 2, 3, and 4, those are still a half step apart. So that's called third extended position. If the book asks you to do that, that's third extended. And then fourth position, we haven't quite talked about how to play that yet, but you can kind of infer that when you played third position, your first finger was on G. So now when you play fourth position, your first finger is going to be up just a little bit higher on the A. And again, all half steps here, so pretty easy to figure out where your fingers go. And you just follow your key signature. So the book will tell you for the first little while, will say which position, which finger pattern they want you to play. And it's important that you understand what these are. All right, bass, it's the same thing, and you've been doing this for a long time already. So you actually have third, third and a half, fourth, and fifth position. And I think you probably can kind of interpret that. We've worked through those positions already, so I'll just leave it at that for now. Violins and violas, yours is actually a little bit more difficult. Both of your positions are called third position, but as you can see, they are different finger patterns. If you take a look at what the difference is between your two finger patterns, and it's again the same in that yellow box, you'll notice that the only note that is different is the B flat or the B. So when we're playing, we're going to need to say, does the music ask for a B flat or does the music ask for a B natural? And that's going to drive what finger pattern we use. So what I'd like you to do, because for cello and bass, the book actually tells them which pattern to use. Violins and violas, it doesn't. So we're going to kind of help that out on our own. I'd like you to take a pencil and I'd like you to label this top, the first finger pattern as finger pattern A. This is the finger pattern that has the B flat in it. Okay. And then I'd like you to label the second one as finger pattern B. All right, so now that we understand these finger patterns, everyone please take a look at number two in the lesson book. We're on page 2 in the lesson book. And underneath your first note, you're going to see a symbol that looks like this. If you're not familiar with Roman numerals, that is a way of writing 3. We write our positions in Roman numerals. That means third position whenever you see that. So that means you're going to put that first finger on the note G. Okay. If we look at our key signature tells us that we have 2 flats, a B flat and an E flat. A B flat and an E flat. So again, like I said, cellos and basses, it actually tells you exactly what finger patterns to use to play those right notes. But violins and violas, it doesn't tell us. So we have to look at our 2 finger patterns and say which one of those finger patterns will allow me to get that B flat, because that's what my key signature has asked me to play. And as you can see, it's going to be the A finger pattern. So when you do this violins and violas, it's going to be 1, space to 2, and close 3, and then space to 4. That's your finger pattern. All right, so a lot of explanation here, but now we're going to do a little bit of playing. So what I'd like you to do is to take your instrument and find that first note, your G with your first finger. Remember, whatever instrument you're playing, it's first finger to play that G for third position. So I'm going to find it on my violin. I'm actually going to play it in first position first. Beautiful. So that's what it's going to sound like. And you're going to follow bass. It actually has you shift right away, and I know you're comfortable with doing that. Cellos, you don't have to shift at all. In violins, you don't have to do any more shifting. You're going to stay, and violas, you're going to stay right in this position the whole time. Let's practice playing the notes that it's asked us to play, though. So G. Our next note is A. That's a whole step apart. So we're going to try A. And then our next note that we'll need to play is a B flat. That's a half step. So those are the 3 notes you'll need for this exercise. Okay, again, like if you're a cello, it's going to be 1, 3, 4. Okay, but it should sound exactly the same as what I'm playing. So now I'm going to go through and play number 2. If you're still trying to catch on to how this all works, remember, it feels very different playing notes with different fingers than you're used to. It takes a little bit of time to kind of adjust how your thinking is and have this make sense. So it's okay if you're having a hard time with this to start, but I'm going to play the second line for you, and then maybe you could pause and try it on your own, and then maybe even go back and play it with me. So here's what the second line, number 2 sounds like in your lesson book. Okay, again, for everyone except the bass, you stayed right in that third position, which I know is new for many of us, so that's a good thing that we're staying there. We're not having to go back and forth. Bass, we've had a lot of practice with going back and forth already, so I'm sure we're okay with that. So take some time to practice that. You might need to do it 10 times before you feel even partway comfortable with it. It's completely different, right, than what we are used to doing. And I have to turn my page, but you don't have to. We're going to now look at number 3. And if you just looked at the notes for number 3, you would say, man, this looks actually identical to what I just played. But if you look at the key signature, you'll see that that's not the case. So we do not have B flats anymore in this key signature. We now have F sharps, which means everything else is natural, including our Bs. And the reason I'm emphasizing B flat or B is, remember, that's really the big difference in these finger patterns. It's, can I play a B flat or can I play a B natural? Should I play a B flat or a B natural? So now, if we go through what we're going to need to do here, violins and violas, we're going to be using the B finger pattern. So you're going to be playing 1 finger, space to 2, space to 3, and then, well, you won't need your pinky right now, but you get close pinky if you had to play with your pinky. So we're going to be doing the B finger pattern, okay? And we'll get really used to these A and B finger patterns the more you do it. So don't worry if it's still kind of unclear about it. The more we talk about it, the more it will make sense. Cellos, you now have to use your extended position, your third extended. The reason you have to do this is because in the regular third position, there was no B natural. You stopped at B flat. So now you're going to play first finger with your G, a big stretch with your second finger to A, and then 4 fingers for your B. And we will work on this big stretch when you come to your lesson in person. But many of you have had the chance to do that already, so you might recognize what I mean when I say an extension. Okay, and then bass, now you're alternating between third position and fourth position. So again, you're going back and forth. And so these are the notes. Now you can practice in your position here, G, A, and now it's B natural, another whole step. Okay, so here is the number 3, and this is what it should sound like. So again, it sounds almost identical, except it's a B natural instead of a B flat. And you should be able to listen and tell the difference between the two. Finally, we're going to do number 4. This time we're adding in the note C, So violins and violas, nothing is going to change for you. You're going to continue to do this B finger pattern because as you can see, number 4 has the same key signature as number 3. We're playing F sharps, okay? So it's the same idea for you. When you put your pinky down, it's going to be right next to your third finger, very close, okay? Cellos, you have something a little bit different though. You're going to start in third position and play your G with your first finger. And after the second note, when you have to get to your A, you're going to shift to fourth position. Okay, so you have a shift right away for cellos. Violins and violas haven't started shifting yet. Cellos, unfortunately, you have to do it a little bit before everyone else, same with bass, to be able to reach these notes. So you're going to shift to fourth position and hang out there for a couple of measures, go back to third and back to fourth. You'll get a lot of practice doing that. I'll demonstrate it for you on a cello when we are in our lesson in person, but for right now, I'm going to play number 4 so you can hear what it should sound like. And as you're working on it at home, make sure it sounds the same as what I'm playing. So here's line 4. All right, so that's all we're going to go over in this video. If you look down at numbers 5, 6, and 7, you'll see they actually look really similar to what we just did. There's a new set of finger patterns, but it's the same thing on the A string. So it's the same thing, but on the A string. And we'll actually play through those in our lesson. But for right now, I really want you to focus on understanding what those finger patterns mean, knowing your whole steps versus your half steps, and just getting comfortable with being up in third, or depending on who you are, even more positions, right, for cello and bass, but being up in third position and playing there, because I know it does feel a little bit strange. Again, it's okay if some of this you still don't understand. We're going to work through this over the next couple of weeks, and the more you do it, the easier it will get. If you have questions beforehand, you're welcome to ask me, and we'll keep working through this together. Because I know we're all very excited to start shifting. I'm excited, and I'll see you at your lesson so we can do some playing together.